the approach. And the approach is typically the J approach, and I hope that down at the middle school level, that's what you're teaching your kids, is the J approach. It's generally going to be 8 to 12 strides in that J approach. It will lead out in the straight, then going into the curve, and I'd like to do just 10 strides because it kind of helps divide the straight and the curve into 2 different parts, 5 in the straight and 5 in the curve. Now it could change depending on the athlete. Also, depending on the athlete, on what side the approach will happen. So determining which is their jump leg. I was a soccer player, so that's kind of like the way I use it. I say if I pass you a soccer ball, which leg are you going to pass it back with me? So if they say I'm going to pass with my right, well then you're going to jump off your left. That's your left foot. That's usually going to be that plant foot, your power leg. So that you'll jump from the right side. Vice versa, if you kick with your left, you'll start from the left side. That's just a lot of soccer references there. Some people like doing the fall, whichever foot you fall is for, that's your dominant leg. That's another way to figure out which side you're jumping off of. So there's the parts of the approach. I would break it into 3. The first 3 steps are your kind of like your drive phase. It's where you're really developing that momentum, like your power strides. Then you go into the next steps, which is going to be kind of striding it out, really staying tall, and then you're really getting into that curve for those last 4 to 5 steps. I already kind of went into, you can be 5 to 5 with 10 or 6 and 4 depending on the jumper. The curve is essential to the whole jump. It's really important that as you're approaching that curve that you're staying tall. If you've been to any of the other jump stations, either the pole vault, bowling, tripling, they all talked about keeping those hips high and that posture upright. When it comes to high jump and running the curve, it's going to get to that point where they need to lean into the curve and really push outwards on that track. So as they're going into it, you're looking for that lean, but not where they look like they're doing like this, because sometimes you tell a middle schooler kid to lean, they go really far in. It should be that line going straight through their body, leaning into that curve. Common mistakes that happen in that curve is that step out. A lot of them, when they want to do that stride, they want to step out to go into that curve. So it's really trying to get them a target point to run straight at, and I'll talk about that in a second whenever I get into like marking out the marks and checkpoints for you as a coach. But if you do a 10-step approach, this is just kind of my way of trying to help the kid out, is that if they go into that 5th step, their 4th step should be straight, and that next step should be leading into the curve, so that 5th step is going this way, and they don't like get out and then go in. But there's some target points that we can get into when it gets to marking and the approach. So I don't know if y'all look at this or not, but it's just kind of like a guideline. But the keys to the approach is keeping that one foot in front of each other. So whenever it comes to standards, depending on what side your jumper's coming from the standard you want to measure out, it generally, let's say, 10 to 12 feet. The better the jumper, the further out you want to get. The earlier jumpers probably want to get a little bit closer, get a little tighter curve. They'll feel a little bit more comfortable coming into that pit. So maybe for middle school it would be 8 to 10 feet out. And whenever you measure it out this way, this is for those people coming in from that one side, then you'll go back. And this is going to be based on their stride and their power and their comfort level. There's a bunch of different ways to figure out where that curve starts, but just for like a rule of thumb, I would just do like 8 to 10, and then about say 12 to 15 make another mark, and generally that's where the curve will start. It doesn't have to be like you have to be at this spot at that time. When it comes to middle school, if you tell them that, they're going to stare at that spot and they're going to try to hit it. So just kind of be in this general area will help. And then from there, we'll need to be maybe 5 strides back, 4 to 5 strides back. And then kind of make a starting point, and then like they'll have to go through some tests and some trials and errors to really figure out if that's the correct approach or mark for them. Once you got it, put it down. The biggest thing is having that mark out here, because you can say run straight to that mark. Don't look at anything else, go straight to that mark until the curve. That'll help eliminate that step out. Also on the the curve leaning out for practice. I like to draw the curve to help them practice running that 1 foot in front of another and really getting flat on that for jumps. They have to run a little bit more flat. That step that goes into the last one to jump off of, it's going to help lower those hips. That plant leg that you're jumping off of is out more, out underneath your hips to create that part where you're going into the mat. Probably talking way too fast. So the takeoff, that's what we're talking about. That's what I'm moving on to. Flipping over the page. Alright, so you have 5 strides in the straight, 5 strides in the curve. That takeoff of, again, for like your basic like intro to high jump, you definitely want the takeoff spot to be like an arm's length away from the bar. So if you want to help them mark, you want to be closest to the stander that they're running into, so the inside standers where they're going to jump off of. And then just put an arm's length away, kind of make an X, and that's going to be a little target point. And again, make it where it's like, I want you to be in this general area. You don't want them to jump in the middle of the mat. If they do, they'll go right into this standard. With that speed that they're having here and creating that lean in the curve, it's just going to take them right to the standard and off the mat there. So really help them get comfortable jumping from a little bit further out from the mat and earlier when you get to that first standard to help prevent them getting hurt over here. Vice versa, if they're coming from this way, I'm going to be a little bit closer than this one. Big thing when you have to do that takeoff, knee drive, knee drive, knee drive. You want to travel up before you go in. So really focus on, tell them, hey, be patient on that jump. Really power up, get up tall. You'll see some arm swings there, here. Depending on the kids, some kids like to do double, and some kids just like to do the one. I like the idea of them using both whenever they can to get up. So whenever they get there, they're going to need to travel up before they go into that backwards flight over the bar. So over the bar, there is that arch that they create. It doesn't have to be that crazy backbend arch. Sometimes you see a lot of females, they do that, where it looks like their heels touch their head. It doesn't have to be that big of an arch, but they do need to get a type of arch where they're really driving those hips up. And some of the things that are good coaching cues is to really look at that hand or the back of the mat, the back corner of the mat. They'll help them kind of toss that head back and say push your hips up there. And whenever you have to kind of practice this so they can get comfortable traveling over the bar. Whenever they're getting over it, they don't want to extend their legs at the hips where they drop their butts, and that's whenever they sit on the bar a little bit more. Extend at the knees and really just kind of straighten out those legs at the knees and not at the hips. You should land more on like the upper part of your back, and again, you should flow over the bar, not that violent where you're going real hard and it looks very violent, because that's whenever you're not being patient over the bar. That flight over that bar needs to be a little bit more smooth, and that'll help eliminate those feet dragging the bar off or you sitting down on that bar. And also telling them that they need to land on this upper part of their back and not sitting up in the air like a cannonball into the mat. Some of us have seen that. Some of our early high jumpers, they want to just jump up and just like cannonball it. Getting them comfortable with that flight. There's some exercises in the last part of this that you can go through to kind of help them get comfortable going in that backwards flop there. Some other things, high jump meet logistics. So at a meet, whenever they check in, most of those high jumpers are going to tell you what their opening height is. It's very important that you get that, not at the initial check-in, but whenever you call them all in, if they're going at a different height than opening height, they should tell you. So then it'll help with the whole smooth transition, so then you're not calling up like, "What, you're up?" Like, "Oh no, I'm not going in until 5'7". I'm kidding, not at 5'7". I'm like at 4'7". But you know, like that's whenever you tell them that's your opening height, so then they can go ahead and move on to the next person. Your place is based off of the number of attempts it took you to clear those heights. So the last two jumpers, they both clear 5. That next jump though at 4:10, one cleared on the first attempt, the other one cleared on the second attempt. The one who cleared on the first attempt is the one who wins. So fewer attempts of jumping wins the meet versus those who took all 3 attempts on every single jump. And then for middle school and a few high school meets, there's a lot of high jumpers, and it's not like triple or long where you can have different flights because you're all going to different heights. So the idea is it's called 5 Alive, so you always have 5 jumpers going at a time. You'll have, say, the first 5 jumpers. If the first one clears it, then there's like that 5th jumper will come up. And then if the next person doesn't clear it, well, they're still in that 5 Alive mix. They're going to jump after the next 3 jumpers go. So that's an idea to kind of help with the efficiency of the meet. On that, if it's not that many jumpers, you can jump them all get 3 attempts and move on to the next height. You generally move up your high jump bar up 2 inches for each attempt. After everybody's cleared it, or whatever attempted it, then you move it up 2 inches. And as it gets to the higher ones, so like your maybe the last 2 jumpers, or at your bigger meets, it might be 1 inch. Maybe the top jumper, he has cleared that height, and it was a PR, like, hey, can we move up 1 more inch? Sometimes it's a preference, especially in those like early invitationals and stuff like that. I put down some teaching and training exercises for high jump. Circle runs are great for high jumpers because the big part of their approach is that circle run. I usually do skips on top of high knee running. So as they're doing the circle runs, they're kind of going heel toe, really rocking from the heel toe, really feeling that snap and that pop up. And then just basic high knee running. I still try to tell them to do a little bit more flat-footed on that one, just because on the curve, with their speed and a little bit more intensity when it comes to their approach, they're going to be more flat than it is whenever you're doing like a regular 100-meter sprint. They're more on the balls of their feet. Semicircle runs can really help them transition into a straight to a curve. So have them run a straight and then go into some 2 circles and stuff that can help just getting them used to going straight into a curve. Whenever I make my circle, I get a measuring tape. I have one of my kids hold it in the middle, and I have a chalk wrapped around at 20 feet, and I just chalk out circle, and that's kind of the dynamic I do it. The earlier the jumper, the tighter the circle. I get bigger, so sometimes I'll make a 15, 18, and a 20, depending on how many jumpers I have and their level of ability, I guess. And then your basic jumping exercises, there's a lot of similarities to all the jumps. And so just like your power skips, any kind of just like basic form training when it comes to like just plyometrics and just running drills are all great for jumpers. They do not need to jump every day to be a good high jumper. This is a lot on the legs, and then usually your high jumpers do another jump too. So be mindful of that. Don't just like kill them and make them jump every day. There's things you can do, like those fundamental jumping exercises. I would normally you jump twice a week, and then when it comes to like meet weeks and stuff, usually just 1 time and then the meet. Hopefully they're getting in a lot of attempts at those meets and a lot of their full approach practices there. If they're brand new at high jump, I would say practice the approach more than anything, and the flight part will come a little bit later, especially those early jumpers. Being consistent in that jump is really important, just like in the other ones as well. Like approach rehearsal, this is with bungee or bar. You'll have standards, so you can get the little bungee that will help them get over that fear. Some of them are just afraid of the bar, that they're going to hit it and they're going to hurt themselves. Putting that bungee up, it kind of allows you to go up a little bit higher and allow them to try to attempt that inch or more that they're trying to get, and they'll feel comfortable, failing and hitting that rope. It's not going to hurt them. Or you don't have to have anything up there if you just want them to get used to the approach and jumping up on it. One of the good things to do with that is scissor jumps. As they go through it, instead of popping up and going into a full jump, they'll just pop up and just do it like a little scissor, so they're still jumping onto the mat. I'm not a big fan of them coming through and just popping up straight up. I think they're taking away from their curve and not really being staying true to the true form when it comes to the curve, because they're not going into the mat and letting those forces take them in. They kind of fight it a little bit more, and it kind of just contradicts the practice. So usually if you're going to do full approach, kind of going like through warm-up drills and stuff, have them scissor through it. and they're still getting everything and the approach focus, but they're eliminating the focus of going into that flight. So they can really focus on that. Center jumps are great. I see kids do it at meets. It kind of irritates me, but it's okay if you can clear it, I guess. The idea is to clear the bar. So, what else? Back flops. I'm not going to demonstrate this, but you can do back flops in like a kind of like a series of ways. You can have it where you have the bungee up at a low height, and they just trying to jump up, and they just kind of go up and they land on their upper back there, and they're getting used to just that flight over the bar and really kind of like reading how their body goes over it, extending from the knees and out from their hips. Or if, like for your kind of daredevil kids, like usually they're probably in pole vault, doing a backwards flip, but not landing on your feet, landing on your stomach. So you just kind of like go into a back flip, but land on your stomach. Not going to demonstrate that one. Can't do that. But there's just some ways that they can get used to the kind of getting over that fear of going backwards. A lot of middle school high jumpers want to go straight into it this way, wanting them to travel up more than going that way. It is a high jump, not, how hard can you hit the mat and stuff. Are there any questions? I kind of talked really fast, and I hope I covered something and you learned something, but